Today we're going to be talking about getting the most out of your Nox Player. If you're like me and you play mobile games on your PC or Apple, you use an emulator. You can use BlueStacks or Nox. I prefer Nox. I've been using it and streaming with it for a long time. Well, they recently announced a new patch for their 32-bit Nox Player. But what most people don't realize is 6 weeks ago, they kind of sneakily added in a 64-bit version. Teamfight Tactics called for it and other games before it. But with the 64-bit Nox, I was able to dramatically increase my FPS. Now, I play Ark of War, and in Ark of War, it's a very heavy game. The overall map layout of it is just data heavy and just a lot of server-side stuff coming back and forth. So if you can eke out a couple extra frames, it's worth it. So I want to go over the basics of at least setting up your Nox Player initially, because if you don't have these base settings right, you're not going to see the performance increase. So first thing you want to do is you want to make sure your performance is set to high, 4 cores, and then enable. Like in that little gray text there, it says, please enable VT. What that is virtualization technology. It helps Flash Player and Java and emulators run better on computers. So you have to go into your BIOS. There's a little help link there and enable virtualization technology. Intel and AMD can do this. Okay, so in graphics rendering mode, you get two choices. You get OpenGL or Speed. Now, Speed relies on DirectX. Now, that is based if you have a graphics card that supports DirectX, which they all do, and most integrated does as well. But it's going to run default OpenGL because that's its stable preferred. But if you're looking to get the best performance, I'm going to show you some benchmarks here in a minute. I found that running off the 64-bit Nox emulator and on the speed setting, I was able to get the best frame rates, the most smooth gameplay, and I'll do a little side-by-side. I couldn't get the actual FPS on it, and I'll cover that in a second. But you can definitely see it, and when you go frame by frame next to each other, it's very noticeable. Also, in the game settings, there's an enable high FPS up to 120 FPS, so if you have a high resolution monitor, you might be able to get value out of that. On some games, we don't get it on Ark of War. Our game seems to cap out around 50, 60 as it is. The ASTC texture feature, I wasn't able to get any noticeable value out of, and I'll show that here next. All right, here's a simple graph. Everyone likes graphs. Basically, what I'm showing here is that the 32-bit, I was trying all the different features. Android 5 with the ASTC on, ASTC off, set to 60, set to 120. Ultimately, I got the same frames all the time on Ark of War on a 10-second benchmark, and I couldn't get any value out of those extra features. But with just the virtualization and 4 cores, I was pretty solid at 34 FPS, which is kind of what I'm used to. The upgrade may have had more performance, but I didn't really notice it. However, when I jumped over to the 64-bit emulator, I had a marked drop in value, and that's because I was running on OpenGL. Now, all of these tests in this chart here are done on OpenGL, and that's because Fraps only works on OpenGL for Nox Player. So if you want to get the FPS on DirectX, you can't do it through Nox, and I don't know a way to measure it. So the best thing I found was to just record the entire setting at 60 FPS and then just compare screen by screen to show you what I found. So what you have is on the far left, right, you have your 34 FPS, your OpenGL, your original 32-bit Nox. That was the standard yesterday. The new standard is in the middle or the right. If you're going to run 32-bit with DirectX, you can still get better performance in that middle portion there. And then, of course, the best performance, which is what this whole video is about, is running the 64-bit Nox Player with DirectX, and you can really see the smoothness. Now, in this replay here, you'll see that the 34 FPS OpenGL on the left versus the, I don't know, FPS DirectX 64 on the right. And you can just see the marked difference. You can see how fast the frame tightens up when you pull the mouse to the side and come back. And that's a big thing for Ark of War players because the response time of the emulator lets you make your next action. You don't want to be waiting for the app to catch up before you make your next move. And then in our next benchmark, what we have is the DirectX 32-bit versus the DirectX 64-bit. And this is what I was most interested in because I could just see with my eye. I knew I was getting better, more responsive frame rates with the DirectX, and this really marks it. If you just kind of watch each element on the screen as they go by, you can just you can almost feel the game lag just catching up to each monster, catching up to each tile, and just how much more faster it rips on the right side. It just grabs a hold of that screen and just pulls you right into the game quicker. I mean, you're thinking to yourself, well, it's because you're doing the actions on that one faster. I actually start the benchmark and recording of these clips exactly when the benchmark starts. It's a macro benchmark. As soon as I see the mouse click, I stop it on that frame. So every response after this, even though it looks like the one on the right is faster, it's not because I started the frame sooner, it's because the game engine is actually that much faster, not to mention the bonus frame rates you're getting on top of that. Now, the final result here is this 64-bit DirectX result. And I'm going to go ahead and show it one more time. And if you're running this at YouTube at 60 FPS, think about this. Does your emulator play this fast? Think about it, moving your mouse around. I'm really excited with this performance. From the best I can tell, I'm guessing about 50 to 60 FPS here. I definitely have the potential to go to 120 according to Nox Player, but I don't think I'm breaking 60 here. I just not seeing it with my eyes. But it's definitely over 40. I'm thinking 45, 55 FPS here, which is a marked improvement, as one of the biggest criticisms of emulators on PCs is that they're just not optimized as well as cell phones are sometimes, and you can run into weird lag issues depending on the game engine. And then just to tie it up all together here, I mean, I want to show just what a battle looks like. You can see how quick the animations are jumping around as the skills pop in. You can see how well the troops float up and down, the arrows moving up and down. It's just really high frame rate, which is just not something we're used to in these battles and on our world maps. So it's a big upgrade. It's a big improvement. Definitely change your settings, switch over to 64-bit if your PC allows it, turn on that virtualization, enable 4 cores, and beef up your emulator so you can get that same mobile feel on your PC. Great little upgrade. Nox Player, free.